The Ninja Foodi has 10 functions in one machine, but at $300, is it worth its price point? Today, I'm testing every function to find out the truth. Can it actually replace my air fryer, toaster, and dehydrator? Do baked cookies come out nice and gooey? Now before we dive into the first test, let's take a look at everything it comes with. To start off, you've got the device itself, and honestly, it's pretty big. Definitely will take up a lot of counter space, but inside of it already comes with 2 wire trays, this wire basket, which you can use for air frying, 2 other metal trays, which I believe we'll use for roasting things, and a roasting tray with holes in it, which it says to use for whole roasting, and air frying. Now, although the device itself is pretty big, at least all of the parts can fit inside. When you're not using it, you can just store all of the trays in here, close it up, and it's all together. But now, let's test all 10 functions to see if the $300 price point is justified. Starting with our simplest and quickest setting first, toasting bread. Now you can toast as many slices that will fit onto these wire racks, which honestly looks like it would be a lot. I'm just gonna go ahead and toast 2 slices. Based off of this, I think you could fit at least 8, if not more. Close it back up, and then on the front here, we're gonna choose this toast setting. So I'll just click on the function button until it gets to toast. Then you tell it how many slices you're toasting, which helps determine how long it toasts for, and what shade you want for how cooked the toast is. Down from 1 all the way up to shade 7 at the most. I'm gonna go with like a medium toast at 3 here. The last thing you'll see here is it tells you what rack to put your item on. So it says rack 3, and on the side here, you're gonna see these numbers that tell you the rack number. So you can see the 3 right here. So actually our toast needs to be on this rack. So after swapping it, I'll get this closed up, and let's hit start to get this going. And it looks like it's gonna take about 3 minutes. And it's now 3 minutes later, our toast is ready, let's take a look. And immediately, I'm thinking that I should have done a higher setting than number 3, because although this feels slightly toasted here, it's not really golden brown so far. So I'm gonna put this back in on the 2 shade, just to give it a couple extra minutes here, and then we'll take a look once more. And now it's another 2 minutes later, and I'm seeing some slight color on our toast. You can see just a little bit of browning, although I will say they're pretty uneven in terms of browning. This one's way darker than the other one. But let's do a quick taste test to see how toasted it actually is, and ripping it apart, I can definitely feel it. And although it doesn't fully look like it, this is really crispy on the outside. It actually tastes perfect to me. So I think it's a little bit slower than a regular toaster and didn't do quite as good of a job in terms of color, but overall, I'm gonna give toasting an 8 out of 10. But now let's move on to our second setting, the bagel setting, and see how it does with that. So let's switch over our function first this time. Set it to 2 slices, and again, it tells us rack number 3. So let's get the 2 slices on rack number 3 once again, just like the toast. Get them in there, close it up, and I'm gonna go up to shade 5 for this one, just to make sure our bagel gets really nice and crispy, and let's get started on it. Each of the different functions of this oven use different heating elements and fan speeds, so it all cooks a little bit differently, which is why there's so many different modes. But with that, our bagel is ready. Let's take a look. And although I underdid the bread, it looks like shade 5 on the bagel was a little bit too much. It actually burned the top of our bagels here. So clearly, setting 4 would have been better for our bagels, but that doesn't mean I'm not gonna taste test it. Let's go ahead and try it out. And although you could hear the outside and see how crispy the outside actually is, the inside of our bagel is super soft and really doughy inside of there. Which for me is actually a perfect bagel. That's exactly what I look for. I'm gonna count the burning as my fault and actually give it a 10 out of 10 for bagels. This is amazing. Now next up, we're making some nachos on our broil setting. Let's get this cheese nice and gooey. Switching this over to the broil setting, and it looks like it's still rack number 3. So let's get our basket into the right shelf right here and start this and see how nice that cheese looks in 5 minutes. And these are starting to look good. Let's look into them. It's about 2 minutes later, and the chips are starting to get a little bit burnt in there. And look at that cheese though, guys. It is brown, looking delicious. Here, come take a closer look. Those look absolutely unreal. And now for the cheese pull. Oh my God. I've got to test this one out. Let's go, even though it's boiling hot. This broiled the nachos probably better than my regular oven. These are to absolute perfection. Once again, I have to give this a 10 out of 10. The next setting we're testing with this oven is air frying with these frozen French fries. So let's get the function switched over to air fry. I'm gonna turn up the temperature to 400. And once again, we're still on the third rack level. I don't know if that's gonna be for most of them, but let's get this into the third rack. So in goes our wire rack on the third rack here. Because the tray itself is not wide enough, it does have to sit on that rack. And then our air fry tray goes in, and let's get these started. It says 20 minutes, but I think these are only gonna take like 5 to 7 minutes to cook. We'll check in a few minutes. I was wrong, it's actually about 17 minutes later. Let's take a look at the fries. And immediately you can tell they are nice and golden and look really crispy too. Here's a fry up close. And although when I break it in half, it doesn't feel as crispy. But they are shoestring fries, so that does kind of make sense. Let's do a taste test though. And yeah, these are really crispy on the outside. They're really soft on the inside. They actually remind me of McDonald's fries. Again, I'm not trying to give out all 10 out of 10s here, but I just see no reason not to. I have to give air frying another 10 out of 10. But with that, let's move into our next setting. We are baking some chocolate chip cookies because I need a dessert. Now I've got 4 on the tray right here. Honestly, I think you could probably fit upwards of 12 or even more. Let's switch this over to our bake function. And we're still on rack number 3. And the packaging for these says 350 from 10 to 14 minutes. I'll just leave it at 20 and see what happens. Let's start this up. It's about 10 minutes later, and through the little window, these are looking golden brown, so let's take a look. And look at those cookies. They are pretty puffed up. Now, to the touch, these are super soft. I'm gonna let them cool for about 3 or 4 minutes and see if they'll firm up, because that's typically what happens with cookies. It's about 3 or 4 minutes later. I think that's the most important part of cooking cookies that no one realizes that they need to cool after. So take a look at the cookies now. I can actually fully lift this up, although I accidentally broke it in half, because the outside is nice and hard now. Now, admittedly, I probably should have cooked this about 1 minute more, so maybe 11 minutes, but I'm seeing a gooey inside and the outside's feeling pretty crispy. Let's do a taste test. Oh man, it's everything you dream of in a cookie. If you don't like gooey cookies, cook this like 2 minutes longer. But I love when the inside is just melting in my mouth and there's a little bit of crunch on the outside. These cookies, again, they're a 10 out of 10. I don't know what else to say, guys. Next up, I've got some mango slices, and that's because we're dehydrating these. If this works, it's actually gonna blow my mind. So as always, let's switch this over to dehydrate. We want it at 135 degrees. Unsurprisingly, we're going in on rack number 3 once again, and we're setting this for 6 hours. So I'll check in with you guys in about 5 to 6 hours. We'll see how these mangoes come out. It's now over 6 hours later. Let's check on the mangoes. Here we go. Those are looking super dehydrated. Wow. I mean, they're still soft and not crispy, and I can't break them apart super easily or anything, but they do feel super dehydrated. Even the thin pieces are a little tough to break apart. But let's do a taste test, see what they taste like. Interesting. Okay, so I like the thicker slices better. They're actually still super juicy on the inside, even though they're dried on the outside. These are really good, but I've given out too many 10 out of 10s. I'm gonna go 8 out of 10 on the dehydrate here. Now, next up, we're not only going in with 1 pizza, but we've actually got 2 pepperoni pizzas and apparently can cook them both at the same time. So switching this over to the pizza setting, and then even though it says rack level 3 right here, you can click this 2 level button, the one we haven't used yet, and that switches it so you can use 2 different racks to cook things at the same time. So we're gonna use rack 3 and rack 1 to cook 2 pizzas. So first up, our pizza going onto rack number 1, and then I'm gonna slide in rack number 3 above. I'm super curious to see if they cook evenly together. I'll turn this up to 425, which is what is recommended. 17 minutes is recommended, but I'm just gonna set it a little extra at 25 since we have 2 pizzas, and let's see what happens. It's only about 15 minutes later, but our pizzas are starting to look golden. Come take a look. Let's get them opened up here. And honestly, that top one's looking a little more cooked than the bottom one at first. Let's pull it out, and that's beautiful. Perfectly golden cheese, very crispy on the edges here. And now for the bottom one. Honestly, on second look, it looks pretty similar. You still got some burnt edges over here, golden cheese. Everything looks nice and crispy on the crust there. So overall, it's looking pretty good. Let's do a taste test though. It's extremely hot, but cooked to perfection. Now, I think an oven does an equally good job as this, but this one was honestly a little bit faster. I feel like I have to just go 10 out of 10 on this again. Next up, we're air roasting not only chicken thighs, but also asparagus as well at the same time. All right, so for this, we're switching over to the air roast function, and you might be wondering what's the difference between air roast and air fry? Because to be honest, I didn't know the difference either, but after reading about it, air roast is meant to keep the outside crispy and the inside stays nice and soft and juicy, which is what you want for chicken thighs. Air fry kind of just crisps the whole thing super quickly. So since we're cooking two things again, we're going on 2 level for this one. And our chicken thighs are gonna go on top of a wire rack on tray 1, and then they go in our roasting tray, which has these holes so the juices fall to the bottom onto our pan that's below it, as you can see there, so that the juices don't smoke up and cause a ton of excess smoke. This all sits on that wire tray, and then our air fry basket of our asparagus goes on rack number 3. This goes in at 400 degrees, and we need 25 to 30 minutes, so this is perfect. I'll check in with you guys in about 25 to 30 minutes. 25 minutes later, it's all looking really ready. Come take a look with me. So the first thing I noticed is the asparagus shrunk significantly, but it's got a really good amount of color to it, and that seasoning looks awesome on it. And then the chicken itself, it looks really crispy, super golden browned on all of the outside skins there. Let's try the asparagus first. I'm not even the biggest asparagus fan, but those have a really good crunch, but also a really nice softness and flavor to them. Absolutely delicious. Now I'm gonna get a bite of chicken cooked. Feels just super crispy on the outside there. There's the inside of it. Definitely still nice and juicy inside there. The seasonings come through perfectly. The crisp is awesome. It's super juicy still. This is some of the best chicken thighs I've ever cooked. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I already have a toaster oven that's very similar to this one with a lot of different functions to it. I was hoping I would not like this one so that I could just keep the one I have and return this one. However, once again, I just have to give air roast a 10 out of 10. It's an absolutely delicious meal it's made. Next up, we are whole roasting an entire chicken that I've been marinating for about 4 hours now. So this one switches over to our whole roast function, as you could have guessed. And finally, even with just one rack, we're on rack level 1 here, which definitely makes sense. It's got to fit this entire chicken in it, and it would probably touch the top on any other rack. So there we go. Slides in just like our chicken thighs did on the roasting tray, with the tray below it and the wire rack below that. I'm gonna turn this up to about 55 minutes, which is how long it says, and let's get started. And once again, I'll see you guys in about an hour to check on this chicken. It's now about an hour later, and look at this thing through the window. It looks unreal. That has to be the prettiest chicken I've ever roasted in my life. It's a perfect golden brown all the way on the outside. I already checked the internal temperature, and this is all set to go. I'm gonna give it a little carve and see if it's still nice and juicy on the inside. And just pulling up the wing here, this thing is dripping with juices on the inside. And you can see the steam actually coming off of this. It is absolutely dripping in juices. Let's try this one out. Costco has absolutely nothing on this. This is the best roasted chicken I've ever had in my life. No question about it. This is easily a 10 out of 10. And our last function we have to test is reheat, which I've got our frozen French fries from yesterday left over, ready to test. You can see these are just super soggy. They're cold. They taste absolutely terrible cold too. So I've got them back in our air fryer basket. The function is switched back to reheat for the final time. And I'm gonna turn the temperature up to like 300 to reheat these. Let's throw this into rack 3 as it says. And actually I'm gonna go 350 on the temperature, but let's get this started. And about 6 minutes later, these fries are starting to look nice and golden, and I see a little bit of smoke coming. Let's take a look at them. Here we go. You can hear the sizzle of the fries immediately. And I can already tell that these are definitely nice and cooked through. They feel crispy again. And they're nice and hot. Let's try a bite of one. Is it better than when they were cold? A lot. Is it as good as when I first air fried them? I'm gonna say no, they're not quite back to the same level. Overall, Reheat did a decent job though. I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. And now that we've gone through all the functions, I'm sure you're wondering about the cleanup of the gadget too. Now on the bottom right here is a crumb tray. This you can easily pull out and wash it and clear off all the crumbs that kind of fall down to it. And then the wire basket here, the air fry basket, along with these wire racks are dishwasher safe, but they say it'll last longer if you don't dishwasher those. However, unfortunately, both of these trays are not dishwasher safe at all. It'll completely ruin them, both the roasting tray and the drip tray that goes below it. So overall, you pretty much have to hand clean all pieces of this and hand wash the inside of the gadget, which for me is probably the one downside of it overall. I wish I could just dishwasher all the pieces and have them clean up. In the comments, let me know which of these features stood out to you the most, but overall, clearly, I strongly recommend this gadget. It is my favorite multi-feature oven that I've ever tested, and everything pretty much came out exactly how I wanted it to. Now, if you want to see me test another Ninja gadget, make sure you click right here and don't forget to subscribe.